From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2020, these are the Ham Nation headlines for Wednesday, July 20th, 2016. U.S. amateur radio operators were shocked last week to hear the news that Amateur Electronic Supply had decided to close its doors at the end of July after 59 years in business. This week comes news that the Milwaukee location of AES is reopening as the newest ham radio outlet. We hear more from Paul Brown, WD9GCO.
According to Steve Gilmore, W4SHG, National Sales Manager for HRO, the decision to discuss acquisition of some AES personnel was made as soon as the news broke that they were going to close at the end of July. The most important thing to us was to acquire that knowledge and experience in customer service, said Gilmore. Gilmore said that they had approval of AES's senior management to conduct the interviews, and while they were on site in Milwaukee, they came to the conclusion that having a centralized location would not only serve an area where they had previously no presence, but would also allow them to have much quicker shipping times to more of the country. The company's plan is to completely remodel the Milwaukee store, at which time they believe that they will have the largest physical amateur radio store in the country, possibly the world, with merchandise from every major manufacturer in the field. When I asked Gilmore about the other AES locations, he said that mathematically, the Milwaukee location was the only one that made sense right now. Ham Radio Outlet has been in business since 1971 and currently has 13 locations across the United States. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Paul Brown, WD9GCO in Valparaiso, Indiana.
Emergency preparedness is critical for American Indians living on often remote tribal lands. There's an emergency drill coming up involving the tribes, and organizers need your help.
The National Tribal Emergency Management Council and the National Tribal Amateur Radio Association are calling Wednesday, September 21st, the day of the quake, and they're hoping to get some of the ham radio stations in American Indian country involved in an important exercise that day. Working with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the groups will collaborate on an emergency communications drill, passing messages from the Tachi Nation in Lemoore, California, to New York about a simulated West Coast earthquake and its aftermath. A well-scripted scenario which will include a building collapse, evacuations, and a search and rescue operation for those missing. For the exercise to work best, however, it will need the involvement of amateur radio relay stations, and in this case, the relays should be stations based in tribal communities or tribal members who are hams wanting to participate. Any tribal amateur radio clubs or individuals within tribal communities wanting a role in this event should contact Nathan Nixon at nathan.nixon@itcaonline.com for details. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Neil Rapp, WB9VPG in Bloomington, Indiana.
Of course, the Atlantic hurricane season is just getting started.
Storm season is upon us, and if last year's hurricane season can be considered history, then the ARRL webinar on Thursday, July 21st, might be considered a history lesson. The 90-minute program is a guide to preparing for this year's Atlantic hurricane season and emergency response, and will include a look back at the roles amateur radio played during last year's season. The overview will touch on the Hurricane WatchNet, the Voice over Internet Protocol Hurricane Net, the Canadian Hurricane Center, and the ARRL's coordination. Registration is open. If you have questions, contact Mike Corey, KI1U, the ARRL's Emergency Preparedness Manager, at mcorey@arrl.org. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Bobby Best, WX4ALA.
No matter where you live, it's best to, as the Boy Scouts say, be prepared. And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at www.arnewsline.org. With Paul Brown, WD9GCO, Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, Bobby Best, WX4ALA, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe, I'm Don Wilbanks, AE5DW. 7-3. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation.